The clatter of plates and silverware echoed through the kitchen of Bellissimo, each crash making me wince. 6 hours into my shift, my lower back throbbed with a dull ache that radiated down to my swollen ankles. I adjusted my waitress uniform for the 100th time, trying to conceal the small bump that had begun to show beneath the black fabric. 4 months pregnant and barely keeping my head above water. Table 7 needs water refills, and the couple at 9 just arrived. VIPs, according to Marco, Sophia whispered, brushing past me with a tray balanced on her palm. I nodded, grateful for the distraction from the nausea that had been my constant companion. The elegant dining room of Bellissimo was a far cry from the life I'd known just months ago, designer dresses, private jets, and a penthouse overlooking the city. Now, I wore sensible shoes that pinched my feet and counted tips at the end of each shift, praying there would be enough for next month's rent. Alessa, are you listening? Table 9. Don't keep them waiting, Marco, the floor manager, hissed. His eyes flickered to my midsection before he turned away, his disapproval evident in the tightness of his shoulders. I smoothed down my apron and grabbed 2 leather-bound menus, pushing through the swinging door into the dining room. The chandeliers cast a warm glow over the white tablecloths and polished silverware. I inhaled deeply, centering myself as I'd learned to do since everything fell apart. Table 9 was positioned in the far corner, partially obscured by a decorative column. The best seat in the house, reserved for those who could afford privacy. I approached with my gaze lowered, the way I'd been instructed when serving important guests. Good evening and welcome to Bellissimo. May I offer you our wine list to start? The rehearsed greeting died on my lips as I looked up. Time seemed to stretch and contract all at once, the air crystallized in my lungs. Sitting there, his broad shoulders draped in a tailored charcoal suit that I remembered selecting with him at his favorite atelier, was Viktor Sokolov, my husband, my ex-husband, the father of the child I carried, the man who had discarded me like yesterday's newspaper when I needed him most, and across from him, draped in a crimson dress that clung to her perfect figure, sat a woman I'd never seen before. Her fingers, adorned with a diamond that caught the light and scattered it like shattered glass, were entwined with his. The same fingers that had once traced patterns on my skin in the dark. Victor hadn't noticed me yet, his attention fixed on the woman whose smile revealed perfect white teeth. She laughed at something he said, the sound like tinkling crystal. I stood frozen, menus clutched to my chest as the room began to spin around me. I was thinking we could do Venice for the honeymoon, I heard him say, his Russian accent wrapping around the words the way it used to wrap around my name. Private villa on the canal. You'll love it. Honeymoon. The word pierced through me like a blade. I should have backed away. Should have asked another server to take the table. Should have hidden in the bathroom until my shift ended. But my feet remained rooted to the plush carpet, my body betraying me as it had been doing for months now, with its changing shape and unpredictable reactions. Excuse me? Are you going to take our order or just stand there? The woman's voice cut through my paralysis, impatient and entitled. Victor looked up then, his steel gray eyes meeting mine. For a moment there was nothing, no recognition, no reaction. Just the cool assessment he gave to strangers. Then his pupils dilated and the color drained from his face. Alessa. My name on his lips still had the power to send a shiver down my spine. Not of desire, but of terror, because I knew what Victor was capable of when he felt cornered. I'll get another server for your table, I managed to whisper, already backing away, my hand instinctively moving to shield my stomach. His gaze followed the movement, understanding dawning in those cold eyes. He half rose from his chair, but I was already turning, walking as quickly as I could without breaking into a run. Who was that? I heard the woman ask, her voice carrying across the sudden hush that had fallen over our corner of the restaurant. I didn't hear his response. Blood pounded in my ears as I pushed through the kitchen doors, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The memories I'd fought to suppress came rushing back. The argument, the accusations, the night I'd fled our home with nothing but the clothes on my back after discovering what kind of man I'd really married. Alessa? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Sophia's concerned face swam before me. I need to leave. Now. My voice sounded distant, as though it belonged to someone else. You can't just leave in the middle of a shift. Marco will fire you and you need this job." Her eyes widened as she glanced toward the dining room. "Wait, do you know who's at table 9? That's Viktor Sokolov. Nobody crosses him in this city," as if I needed the reminder. "He's my ex-husband," I whispered, the words bitter on my tongue. "And he doesn't know about the baby." Sophia's face paled. "Holy shit. The Viktor Sokolov? The one they call the Ghost?" I nodded, fighting the urge to vomit. Everyone in the city knew of Viktor, though few had seen him. He operated in shadows, his influence extending into every corrupt corner of power. I had been young and naive when we met, dazzled by his charm and the intensity of his attention. By the time I discovered the truth about his business, the violence, the illegal operations, the blood on his hands, I was already his wife, already trapped. "You need to get out of here," Sophia hissed, gripping my arm. "If he's here with another woman—" "His fiancée," I corrected, the word like acid in my mouth. "They're planning their honeymoon." A commotion from the dining room made us both freeze. The kitchen door swung open, and Marco appeared, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and anger. "Mr. Sokolov wants to see you, Alessa. Now. I can't." Panic clawed at my throat. "I need to go home. I'm not feeling well." Marco stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen to me. That man owns half the judges and police chiefs in this city. If he wants to talk to you, you talk to him. I don't know what's between you two, and I don't want to know. But you don't say no to a man like that." I knew he was right. Running would only delay the inevitable. Viktor had found me. Whether by cruel coincidence or deliberate tracking, it didn't matter. He knew where I worked now, knew I was pregnant. The fragile new life I'd been building was about to shatter. "I'll go," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But not to the table. Tell him I'll meet him in your office." Marco hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. "And Alessa, whatever he wants, just give it to him. People who cross Viktor Sokolov have a habit of disappearing," as if I needed that reminder either. I made my way to the small office at the back of the restaurant, my legs trembling beneath me. The room was barely larger than a closet, with a desk cluttered with invoices and scheduling sheets. I sank into the chair, trying to calm my racing heart for the baby's sake. The door opened less than a minute later. Viktor filled the frame, his presence consuming the oxygen in the room. He closed the door behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded more threatening than a slam. "My Alyosha," he said softly, using the pet name that had once made me melt. Now it made my skin crawl. "You've been hiding from me." "Don't call me that," I whispered. "And I haven't been hiding. I left. There's a difference." He moved closer, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne with notes of cedar and bergamot, the same cologne I'd given him for his birthday last year. Before I knew what he really was, before I found the blood-stained shirt he'd tried to hide from me, before I overheard the phone call about the man who needed to be taken care of. "You look different," he observed, his gaze traveling over me, lingering on my stomach. "How far along?" I swallowed hard. 4 months. Something flickered in his eyes, possession, calculation, fury. With Viktor, it was impossible to tell. His emotions were always carefully controlled, part of what made him so dangerous. "Mine?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. "Does it matter?" I countered, finding a shred of defiance. "You've moved on." Quite quickly, I might add. His jaw tightened, the only indication that my words had hit their mark. "You left me, Alessa, in the middle of the night, like a thief." "What did you expect?" "I expected you to let me go," I said, meeting his gaze despite the fear coiling in my stomach. "I know what you are, Viktor, what you do. I want no part of it." He smiled then, a predator's smile that never reached his eyes. "And yet, here you are, carrying my child, my heir." The possessiveness in his voice made me shiver. I'd seen how Viktor viewed people as possessions, things to be owned, controlled, discarded when they no longer served a purpose. I refused to let my child become another piece in his empire of blood and fear. "I didn't know I was pregnant when I left," I admitted. "And it changes nothing." Viktor moved suddenly, his hands coming to rest on the arms of my chair, caging me in. His face was inches from mine, his breath warm against my skin. It changes everything, Alyosha. Everything. His voice was a dangerous whisper. You're carrying a Sokolov, my blood. Did you think I would allow my child to be raised by a waitress, to grow up in some shabby apartment, never knowing their birthright? I turned my face away, unable to bear his proximity. Better that than knowing their father is a monster. His hand shot out, gripping my chin and forcing me to look at him. There was no violence in the touch, but the threat of it hung in the air between us. You knew exactly who I was when you married me, he said, his voice eerily calm. You enjoyed the benefits of my work well enough. The jewelry, the vacations, the lifestyle. You never questioned where the money came from until it suited you to develop a conscience. The accusations stung because there was a grain of truth to it. I had suspected Victor's business wasn't entirely legitimate, but I'd chosen not to look too closely. I'd been young, infatuated, and willfully blind. I was naive, I admitted. But I'm not anymore. Please, Victor, just let me go. Let us go. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Never. The word was final, absolute. You are mine, Alessa. You will always be mine. And now... His gaze dropped to my stomach. Now there are two of you that belong to me. The door opened suddenly, and we both turned to see the woman in the red dress standing there, her perfect features arranged in an expression of confused irritation. Victor? What's going on? Why did you leave in the middle of dinner? Her gaze slid to me, taking in my waitress uniform, my disheveled appearance. Who is this? Victor straightened, his mask of control slipping back into place with frightening ease, but he didn't move away from me, his body still positioned possessively. Katrina, this is Alessa, he said smoothly. My wife. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. Ex-wife, she corrected, her voice tight. You told me you were divorced. The paperwork is ongoing, Victor replied, his gaze never leaving my face. And the baby? Katrina asked, her eyes narrowing as she took in my condition. The tension in the room thickened until it was hard to breathe. I looked between them, the powerful man I had once loved and now feared, and the woman who had unwittingly stepped into the dangerous role I had fled. Congratulations, I said to her, finding my voice at last. He failed to mention his pregnant ex-wife would be your server tonight. I wonder what else he's failed to mention. Victor's eyes darkened with warning, but I was beyond caring. Whatever tenuous safety I had found was already compromised. Whatever happened next would change everything. Again, the only difference was that this time, I wasn't just fighting for myself. The silence that followed my words seemed to stretch into eternity. Katrina's perfect features contorted with shock, then fury. She turned to Victor, her diamond ring catching the light as she pointed an accusatory finger at him. You told me she left you over a year ago, that there was no child, that you were free to marry. Each sentence emerged like the crack of a whip. Is that... Her gaze fixed on my stomach, then back to Victor's impassive face. Is that your baby? I watched Victor, curious despite my fear to see how he would handle being caught between his lies. This man who controlled everything, who tolerated no defiance, now cornered by the simple truth. Katrina, he said, his voice controlled but with an edge I recognized, the warning tone that preceded his worst fury. Wait for me in the car. Dmitri will take you. I'm not going anywhere until you explain this. Her voice rose, and I saw Marco hovering anxiously in the doorway behind her. The last thing he wanted was a scene involving Viktor Sokolov. Miss, Marco interjected cautiously, perhaps we could offer you a complimentary dessert at your table while Mr. Sokolov finishes his... business? The look she gave him could have frozen hell. You think I want dessert? When I just found out my fiancé has a pregnant wife? Ex-wife, I corrected quietly, though it felt hollow even to my ears. The papers Victor had mentioned were a fiction. I had fled, but I had never filed for divorce, too afraid that any legal proceeding would lead him straight to me. Victor moved with the fluid grace that had always reminded me of a predator. In 2 strides, He was beside Katrina, his hand at the small of her back, possessive, controlling, but appearing merely solicitous to anyone watching. "We will discuss this at home," he murmured. But even from across the room I could hear the steel beneath the velvet. This is not the place. For a moment, I thought she would resist. Then I saw the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of options, the recognition of how little power she actually wielded in this moment. It was a look I knew intimately. "Fine," she said, her voice brittle. "But this conversation isn't over." As Victor guided her toward the door, he glanced back at me over his shoulder. "Don't move," he ordered, quiet enough that only I could hear. "I'll be right back." The threat was implicit. I knew Victor's men would be watching the exits now, knew that running would only postpone the inevitable, but every instinct screamed at me to flee. Marco remained in the doorway, fidgeting with his tie. "Alessa, I don't know what's happening, but I think you should go home. Take the rest of the night off." I shook my head, rising from the chair on unsteady legs. "He'll just follow me there. I need to think." My mind raced through options. My apartment wasn't safe. It would be the first place Victor would look. I had no family in the city, no close friends except Sophia. My savings were minimal, barely enough for next month's rent, let alone starting over somewhere new. "There's a back exit through the wine cellar," Marco said, lowering his voice. "My cousin has a cabin upstate. You could stay there for a few days, figure things out." I stared at him, surprised by the offer of help. "Why would you do that for me?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I had a sister once. Her husband was like him, powerful, connected, dangerous. She tried to leave." His eyes darkened with old pain. "She didn't make it." A chill ran down my spine. I had known what Victor was capable of, but had always believed his promise that he would never hurt me. Now, with the baby, with the evidence of his lies to Katrina, I wasn't sure of anything. "Thank you," I whispered. Marco nodded. "Go to the kitchen. Ask for Paolo. Tell him I said to show you the Barolo collection. He'll understand." He hesitated, then added, "And Alessa, don't ever come back here, for your sake, and for the baby's." I gathered my purse from my locker, my movements mechanical as shock began to settle into my system. The kitchen was a blur of activity, the staff avoiding my gaze. News traveled fast, and no one wanted to be seen associating with the woman who had angered Viktor Sokolov. I found Paolo, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, chopping vegetables near the back of the kitchen. When I relayed Marco's message, his expression grew grave. "Follow me," he said, wiping his hands on his apron. "And stay close." He led me through the chaotic kitchen to a nondescript door that I had always assumed was a pantry. Beyond it, a narrow staircase descended into darkness. Paolo flicked on a light, revealing walls lined with wine racks. "The exit is through there," he said, pointing to a metal door at the far end. "It leads to the alley behind the restaurant. Turn left, walk 3 blocks, then right on Maple Street. There's a bus stop. The number 17 will take you to the transit center." I nodded, memorizing the directions. "Thank you." Paolo's expression softened. "I have a daughter about your age. If she were in trouble..." He didn't finish the thought. "Go. Now." I hurried through the cellar, the chill of the underground space raising goosebumps on my arms. My hands trembled as I pushed open the heavy metal door, bracing myself for the possibility of finding one of Victor's men waiting. The alley was empty, dimly lit by a single flickering lamp. Rain had begun to fall, a fine mist that beaded on my hair and soaked quickly through my thin uniform. I turned left as instructed, walking as quickly as my condition allowed, constantly glancing over my shoulder. 3 blocks, right on Maple. Bus stop. The directions played on loop in my head, a lifeline to cling to in the midst of panic. My phone buzzed in my pocket, once, twice, 3 times. I ignored it, knowing it could only be Victor. He would have returned to Marco's office by now, discovered my absence, unleashed his fury on anyone nearby. The bus stop came into view, a small shelter offering protection from the increasingly heavy rain. I checked the schedule with shaking hands. 15 minutes until the next bus. Too long. Far too long to be exposed. Headlights swept the street behind me. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows of the shelter, heart hammering against my ribs. A sleek black Bentley crawled past, moving at a predatory pace. Even through the tinted windows, I could feel eyes scanning the surroundings. One of Victor's cars